This is the CreaseCast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CreaseCast, your Friday edition. I realized that on the Tuesday show, I forgot to mention that we are moving the show schedules to Friday, particularly because Jacob is here, and he asked me yesterday, when are we recording? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. It's Fridays now.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. Alone on a Friday night? God.
Yeah. Fridays
That is
are...
a great meme right there.
Yeah, Fridays are better right now just because there's less hockey on. And normally the reason why we were doing Thursdays in particular for a while was because obviously Fridays are a big night for Cody to do Abbotsford games. Usually they play a lot of their Friday nights. So for now, while he's not here, it makes more sense to move it. While he's not here for the second shows, it makes more sense to do the second shows on Friday instead. So that's what we're going to be doing from here on out. And of course, that gave us an opportunity to watch the Canucks win their sixth game in a row. Somehow, I have no idea how we ended up here. It feels like an eternity ago now.
That first game of Boudreaux doesn't seem like it was like it's just less than 2 weeks now. It feels like it was like 3 months ago.
Yeah, I feel like
different.
It's a fever dream. And again, part of that is just due to the fact that we're in the Omicron era of COVID. There's all that stuff. Let's get that part out of the way.
Let's talk.
There have been COVID outbreaks all across the league, including on the Canucks. Luke Shen, Juho Lammikko, Jason King, assistant coach, and Tucker Poolman was removed during the game on Tuesday against the Blue Jackets, midway through. And Tyler Mott was just added a few minutes ago before we started recording. So that's happening. And then, the rest of the league is having their own issues with that regarding that. There's a lot of talk of there's no talk of they're going to do what happened the last time, this happened and pause the season entirely.
Mm-hmm.
But there is talk of the idea of already there have been a case where I believe the Flames, Panthers, and I want to say the Blue Jackets are the other one.
I thought it was the Avs. The
Avalanche
NHL announced today that they're just postponing all games for those teams from now up to the 27th. They're on break until after
they're on break.
So that's probably the most extreme measure I can see them doing, unless another COVID outbreak makes a team go until where they have very few players. There's a funny tweet I saw a couple days ago where it's the Flames could have iced, I think, a forward line, one extra player, 2 defensemen, and a goalie. Everyone else was in COVID protocol.
Yikes.
And estimates put about 10% of all major players in the NHL in COVID protocol. I think that was maybe as of this morning or yesterday.
Yeah,
so
which is a lot. So, and 10% doesn't sound like much maybe on a percentage scale, but that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably not including coaches and management.
No, it doesn't. That just includes active
trainers
players
and everything as well. Yeah, exactly. So, we're already looking at a situation where the league is probably going to not pause everybody's games, but they're probably going, the belief is that they're going to go back to kind of similar protocols to what happened last year. And that's going to kind of where you weren't allowed outside. It's more about you have to stay within your bubble, essentially wear a mask at all times, very strict on leaving your hotel
enhanced
room.
Protocols. It's just essentially you do your game, you get out, and if you're on a road trip, it's with the hotel, you're with the team, you're with no one else.
Yeah.
And no activities.
And that's what's going on there. And it's one of those things where it's of course, the health of the safety of the players has to come first in these situations. Mm-hmm. One of the good things, if you want to put a silver lining on everything, is people for all what people talk about, the important part here is that because the players are vaccinated, a lot of them haven't been showing symptoms or actually getting sick, which shows you how the vaccine works. It shows you that it works. It's not about, it can't just stop COVID dead in its tracks, but it can stop you from getting sick and it affecting your body, which is the important part. So that's the good thing. But it's still one of those things where it's you don't want people contracting it at all. You gotta play it safe. And you know, there are going to be some people who didn't catch COVID the first time. Like the big thing that's been pointed out with the Canucks case is that the people who have contracted COVID were all people who are not on the team last year when the Canucks had their big COVID outbreak before they got vaccinated. So it's been all those players who have not dealt with it before. And that in itself means that, again, another case of like, hey, the vaccine works, and you know, you build up the immunity to it, and that's good. And hopefully you just hope the NHL does the right thing, but it already seems like that's not going to be the case in a lot of ways. Like the fact of like, apparently, so this is just my speculation. This is just, I cannot stress enough that it is not based on anything I know. It is just based on what I can gather from my own experiences with the Canucks and with NHL teams over the last however many years of my life. One of the things that apparently, like, I forget who exactly tweeted this out, but essentially an insider was talking about how there has been pushback from the league, from teams, in terms of pausing the season, because it's been discussed, but there's been pushback because a lot of teams have big money making games coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say I know who one of these teams are, but I'm looking at a calendar where the Canucks play the Leafs in Vancouver on a Saturday night. And I'm
in December, and this is though,
December,
like,
right before Christmas.
It's a tradition though, like not a tradition, but it's every December the Leafs come to Vancouver. It's kind of like,
is it every December?
I feel like there's always a Leafs Hockey Night in Canada game in Vancouver, always a 4 p.m. start. It's usually maybe the second week of December. I would be interested to go look at the previous schedules of years past and see that, because I feel like it's deja vu. It's like always a thing. Or they do it in February.
Last year being a different story, but but like, generally speaking, maybe. Like I just look at that. I look at that game on the schedule, which the Canucks are like, it's one of the few games that no matter how bad the Canucks are, they're guaranteed to sell out. Because like there are, obviously the Leafs and also the Canadians you can throw in there as well are two teams that were around a lot longer than the Canucks have been. So a lot of expats from Montreal and Toronto who raised their families on the love of the Leafs, and Canadians who still live in Vancouver. So they end up going to those games, and not to mention the fact that it's probably, as expensive as Canucks tickets are, it's probably cheaper to do that than see a game in Toronto for some people who live in Toronto. Yeah. So it's or like live in other parts of Canada. So those games always sell out. And, if you're the Canucks, you don't want to lose that revenue. And there's already been talk about how today there was the announcement that came out that there will be 50% capacity in place by December 20th, which conveniently enough is after the Leafs play the Canucks tomorrow on Saturday. It does. Now, I would say, I would feel a little bit more fishy about it if, say, it had been like, oh, we're moving it to the 19th, so the game immediately after against the Coyotes. It'd be like, I'd think there'd be more fuel to that. But again, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's a little convenient. I could be totally wrong, and I'm totally willing to be wrong on that one. Like, I just look at that, I'm like,
I think there's a little bit of truth in there. Like, they're just probably thankful that the game with the Leafs is now, like, and not in the future. Like, probably the team
not
is
like
thankful.
A week later.
Exactly, because it would totally dip into their sales. But like, you would even prefer a situation though where it's a 50% rather than like if we had an explosion of cases in our province where the government goes to the team and says, hey, I know it's only 2 hours before game time, but you have to contact everyone and say no one's allowed in the building, which is what happened in Montreal. I think it was Tuesday with around 2.5, 3 hours before the puck drop. Season ticket holders and ticket holders got an email saying no one's permitted in the building, so everyone's getting a refund. Yeah. And it made sense. Quebec's at 4,000 plus cases. They were expecting, I think, that on Thursday or Wednesday. I think they're in those high numbers now. So, yeah.
And, I actually have a ticket for one of those games against Anaheim on Wednesday. So I'm interested to see. I'm assuming now, like, just to give people the heads up, the idea probably with the 50% capacity is that how it usually works in those cases is season ticket holders first and then everybody else. So if you're somebody who just bought a single game ticket off of Ticketmaster or something, you're probably, your ticket's probably going to be one of those ones that could potentially be one of the first to go in that case. Unless you happen to buy resale off from a season ticket holder, then you might actually be okay. It really depends on how many Canucks season ticket holders there are now, which we don't know those numbers anymore. But we do know they went down a lot. So
they did go down a lot, though. Maybe they're on the rebound.
They're maybe on the
last 6 game streak. You never know.
Maybe. I don't. Well, I don't know if. I wonder if you can't. I wonder if
they wouldn't release
season ticket. You can sell like ticket packs, like.
Right. There are people though, like
now.
There are like groups on Facebook, like of season ticket holders, like verified, that will like say, "Hey, I'm not going to go to this game. Anyone interested?" And it's all like pretty, like it's all set up by certain people, not officially approved by the organization, but it's easy way to get tickets from someone who buys season tickets. So. But like, since there are less season ticket holders, there might be a chance that the 50% capacity doesn't cover that the season ticket holder base doesn't cover the whole 50%. So, you might still have a chance. You never know. Depends on what they're giving. I'm assuming they'll give priority, like, stuff like the lower bowl and whatnot. Yeah. They'll want those seats filled up so it looks fuller on the TV.
Gee, that would be interesting. Like, I'm assuming the 50% capacity rule, it would imply that everyone has to be spread out across the entire building at 50% capacity. In theory, in theory, that's not really like, that's hard to execute within itself, because like, if let's say all you take are lower bowl people, let's say like you prioritize the people who bought the most expensive seats over everyone else. What happens when you can't seat them in the lower bowl and you're like, okay, now you're
there are some spots in like the 300 level that are more expensive than a lower bowl ticket, like the center ice view. So I would say that they'll probably try to prioritize the people that are not on the end of the arena, but like on the side. Like, because if you have like front row or second row in the upper bowl on that side, like looking down where it's not just one end of the rink, you probably are paying like over $120 per seat.
Yeah, probably something like that.
So like, I would say that they'll try to spread it out based on price, in terms of at least they don't have to worry and be like, oh, we can only take lower bowl and everyone that bought upper is out of luck. But at least that's what I think.
Yeah. But enough about sad stuff. Let's talk about the fact the Canucks won 6 games in a row, and it's time to hand out the Infinity Blocker this week, because they're actually options. They're options now, which is fantastic. It's no longer just Thatcher Demko. That being said, I'm giving it to Thatcher Demko because he was really good. He was amazing in the San Jose game. The Canucks, like, this was the first time I think in the entire like Boudreau era so far of like the 6 games where they looked like where there were parts of the game where they looked like they were getting 100% run out of the building, like in terms of intensity and like controlling the possession of play. The Sharks were definitely giving them a run for large parts of the second and third period. The first period, the Canucks were awesome. The second and third period is where it fell apart a little bit, and the Canucks just got some timely scoring, which is such a breath of fresh air from before, where they never.
Which is also interesting because that is the inverse pattern of how they played on Tuesday. Their first period was absolutely the worst one that we'd seen in the Boudreau era. They go down 3-0. And then they come back to win 4-3.
God, we haven't even talked about that game.
Yeah, I was like, that's the one game I did end up seeing. So,
God, you know what?
Let's go with that first.
Yeah. Never mind. I'm giving out 2 Infinity Gauntlets instead. Actually, I gave one out to Thatcher Demko. I gave one out to Thatcher Demko. I'm giving another one to Jaro Halak, who got his first win as a Canuck.
No disrespect. No Halak slander on this podcast or in this fan base.
I mean, he wasn't very good in the third.
But like, come on, what's with the are the fans that obsessed about getting the streak going that they're just like, oh, we wanted Demko? Come on, like.
I
Come on,
mean,
that's bad.
it's one of those things where it was like, well, I think John Shorthouse mentioned on the broadcast that the Blue Jackets and like play-by-play people like were like, hey, who's starting in net? And him and John Garrett laughed at them initially, or like, come on, it's gonna be Demko, and then it wasn't.
Demko, right? No, it's
I
like
mean,
they
yeah,
go. It's like we're gonna play the Blue Jackets, and it's like, and you're starting Demko, right?
and
Right.
you're starting Demko, right? Yeah.
So yeah.
And it was it was like I felt really bad for Yarrow after the first pick. I was like, oh, he was not. I was like, oh god, he's not looking good. It's not going to go his way. And then not only the Canucks showed up for one thing,
Yeah.
the Canucks showed up and in a game where they were completely out of it and clawed all the way back and scored for an
All the
answer
way
to
back.
win.
They
Holy cow!
all said moments where, like always, the refs put in a bad call. Not a bad call, but it's just like, of course, they're going against the momentum. There was the late penalty that with like 40 seconds left. That was like, oh, of course, we just took the lead and now they're going to tie it, but they killed it off, thankfully.
Yeah, well, then they got the late power play.
They got the late power play first, and then Bo Horvat scored the game winner eventually. But then, like with 40 seconds left, there was a penalty call against us, and I'm like, of course, with 40 seconds, they're going to put another penalty on the board, and Jackets are going to win, or not win, but they were going to tie up. But yeah, thank goodness they were able to come back there, and that's their first, maybe 3-goal comeback and win in regulation in like 20 years over that, and first 3-0, and first 3-0 comeback since 2016 and win.
I'm trying to think I'm trying to think if I remember if that
I can
that
remember
that feels crazy because I'm like, no, they've come back from 3-0 before, or 3-0 specifically, or a 3-goal lead. Are we talking?
I think it's 3-0. I don't remember.
That makes more sense.
I also the game I remember is the opposite, where they were up 3-0 against the Islanders in like 2016, and then they blew it in the third period. Do you remember that game?
Oh, how could I forget? I've literally talked on this show before. That was the closest I ever came to just dropping the Canucks entirely. That was the closest I ever came. That's how mad I was at the time. I was so mad. But yeah. They came back, they won that game, and I like to think that I had played a small hand in that, because I was like, look, it's good the Canucks are playing very well. It's good that they've brought some games to OT, but I'd like to see them win in regulation. I'd like to see them come back from 3-0 down and win in regulation. Let's see if they can do that. And then they score. And that was at 3-2. But Colson scored to tie it. And then Horvat scored the winner. And I was like, hey, I did it.
Yeah.
I felt so relieved for Yarrow. Like, God,
he deserved that so much. He deserved that. The boys played for him.
Yeah, his save percentage on that game's not going to be wasn't pretty, but he came up clutch when he had to, and that's the thing with Yarrow Halak that I always talk about, is the fact that he's a bit of a slow starter. If you can keep the pressure out of his zone for a while in the early going, he's going to get better as the game goes on, and that's exactly what happened. He didn't let in a single goal after the first period, and. Yeah, those late stages, he made a couple key saves to keep the Canucks in the lead on the power play, and then he won it. And again, like somebody pointed it out, that it's like, oh my god, you watch the replay, like of when the horn sounds, the relief that on Yarrow Halak's face of finally winning a damn game. Yeah, and you're like, oh, I'm so happy for you, buddy. You felt great for him, and then Thatcher Demko the next night comes up with a great performance, like a signature performance of his own. There are a couple guys that you can give it to, like outside of Thatcher Demko. That's the other one, I guess.
Well, I was going to say that I have two as well here, and you as a goalie, you choose both goalies.
Yeah, that's my bread and butter.
Fair enough. So I was going to go with Quinn Hughes for his game against Columbus, 3 assists, and he's a puck moving defenseman, and not even just puck moving, but he was very defensively sound. Because a lot of people have pointed out in his first few years in the NHL, of course he's puck moving, but also a lot of turnovers in certain games, and like when the pressure's on, sometimes he can stumble. But this one, he was solid. It was probably one of his best games as a Canuck I've ever seen. And then in the game against San Jose, I would say Brock Boeser with 2 goals. including an absolute
Yes.
snipe. He's on fire.
Brock Boeser is on an absolute tear, and it is so good to see. Like we talked about on the last show that Brock Boeser is like looking like like he has a new lease on life, and it's awesome. And if you're Vancouver, like how are you not like
He's looking like an all-star MVP again.
Yeah. Now, obviously, if you're the Canucks, you know this is a contract year for Brock Boeser, so the fact that he's scoring at a decent clip with the cap struggles, concerns that you're in probably is a little bit worrying, like on that side of things. But also, there are worse problems to have than having a great young goal scorer going on an absolute tear, and one that looks sustainable to a degree. Like maybe like scoring literally basically up 2 points every single game. That's a little unsustainable, but like the actual things that are making him successful and the things that he's doing to get those goals and to get those points are not like lucky bounces. They're not like there are things that are very easily like something that you can make a sustainable part of your game and can be part of like your and be just like part of what makes you a good player. And that's why I'm not worried at all with that sort of thing, like that there's going to be some sort of regression. Like, and if there will be a regression to a certain extent, but like not in the case of like where he's going to go on another completely ice cold streak. I think it's going to be a case where you're going to see him getting like, points with more regularity again.
It won't be like he's currently on a 7 points in 6 games since this streak. He's 7 points in 6 games. That's up to just over 82 over a season. You'd hope that like if it's not sustainable, you get at least to 60 or so. And I feel like with the way he's playing now, he's guaranteed to. He's playing with some really talented people, and his shot is back. And he seems like he just belongs, like he hasn't for like the last couple months.
Yeah,
like with PD struggles as well.
That might be one of Jim. I wonder if that's ends up being one of interim GM Jim Rutherford's first like moves is to over the Christmas break, or like he's talked about January being the point where he really wants to see what they can do. Like he wants to, and God, it is so refreshing. Like let me just say, it is so refreshing to hear a front office person with a realistic sense of what the Canucks are. I guess on today, Jim Rutherford was on Nick Kiprios's podcast.
Okay.
Or radio show. I forgot because he's at Sportsnet on
the fan 590 in Toronto.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And apparently Kipper was like going like, hey, you guys might make the playoffs, and like giving him the window to be like, yeah, we got a chance kind of thing. Like, you know, positive vibes. Why not? But Rutherford was like, you know, we're still like, I want to see where we are in January before jumping to any conclusions, basically. And it's like, God, thank you for being realistic.
The duality of Jim. Like you've got, and when I say Jim, I don't mean Rutherford, I mean Benning and Rutherford, because you get Benning by December, if they're playing like this and they got 6, they're like, we're all in, getting ready. He's like prepping that draft pick to be traded and looking at the prospects, being like, who's up? But
time to bring back
Rutherford, like they'll go on like an 8 or 9 game win streak, and Rutherford's like, yeah, this team needs to improve a little. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I'm not gonna we're not all in yet.
It's
stuff
Jim,
like that.
It's just like it's the dual. It's the Jim and Yang, if you will.
Jin and Jang.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh man,
it's just such a breath. It's such a breath of fresh air to have a general manager who's, you know, and again, it's not his team, like per se. Like obviously, it's like he didn't assemble a single piece of this group right now. So maybe in 3 years, he's going to be a little bit more like the Jim Benning that we've had for the last however many years, because that's often what happens when you've made the bets that you're the one who's going to stand, who's going to like back them up, and you don't really have to do that when it's somebody else's work. But it is just good to like know that they're not over analyzing a 6-game win streak, because that in itself, even if you are a good NHL team, 6 wins is a lot to get. Like it's hard to win 6 games in a row, even when you're one of the best teams in the NHL. So you can't. So if you're a team that was was notoriously not good before that 6-game win streak. You can't look at this and be like, oh, this means this means
This
it
is
was
the
all
this is
in,
us going. This
the
is
new
our brand new
normal.
team. This is the new normal.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is it's cool to experience it. We're taking it day by day as the previous regime was.
Yeah.
The
Only
streak.
for legitimate reason this time.
Yeah,
like, well, okay,
because
as I
we
said
in
before,
the past
you're the-
we've seen, you know,
if you're the coach,
disappointment.
if you're the coach and the players, yeah, you can take it day by day. Go ahead.
Yeah, not the organization. I mean the team. It's like,
mentality.
hey, we're
but
going in on the Bruce train, and
Yeah.
we're going game by game, and like on that Kyprios note of them trying to be like all super excited, be like, yeah, Canucks are back in. That David Amber tweet back from December 4th. That was
hilarious how he was both very wrong and very correct at the same time.
For those who are wondering about this, so David Amber tweeted on December 4th, 2021, I'm likely in the minority, but I really think if the Canucks can go 4-2, 5-1 during this homestand, they could get themselves into the playoff race. The math isn't in their favor, ... but anything can happen.
I'll say this. I love David Amber. He's great.
Yeah,
he's
awesome.
He's a great host for Hockey Night in Canada, and he's a great hockey analyst. But I mean, there are two things I look at here, where it's one being I think if they can go 4-2, 5-1 during this homestand, they can get themselves back in the playoff race. Sure, you can say that about anybody. That's not really it really is just saying, I think if the Canucks can win more games,
if they win games, they might have a chance. I mean,
if they can win more, if they can win more games,
equals more
chance.
Do it.
Yeah, they could totally maybe do it. It's like,
I am curious
for every team. You can say that about the Sabres too.
Anyway, it's like, hey, you know what? If the Sabres win the next 10 or 15 games, maybe they could look at the that top, that 10th or 9th spot in the in their division. Or sorry, in the conference instead of 14th or 15th. It'll be interesting on Saturday if Amber brings that tweet up, because then Anthony Stewart will be he'll go to Anthony Stewart and be like, what don't you like about the Canucks right now? Again, because there's the famous sigh when he it's the Canucks, but it's so funny how that ended up being correct. They actually went and won. They went
5 games.
Well, that homestand, okay, what did we lose? Oh yeah,
they went 5-1. They went 5-1.
The Pittsburgh game, they absolutely just
got
kicked in,
totaled.
And then the Sunday of firings, and then 5-0.
And Boeser comes in 5-0. Then they go to San Jose and they win one more. And the Canucks, it's going to be incredible. Going into this this next little stretch here. Obviously, okay, the Coyotes game is a game that, let's make no mistake. Let's say, for all intents and purposes, the Canucks still are under the control of Jim Benning and are still coached by Travis Green. Even if they were still here, you 100% should beat the Arizona Coyotes 99 times out of 100. You 100% should.
That's should, but they wouldn't.
Well, and if they didn't, people would be mad, right? I'm going to treat that game the same way I would have things going before, where I fully should. I think everyone should expect them to beat Arizona, in the sense of they should hold them to that standard. Of course, you should be better than the Arizona Coyotes, whether or not you're on the Boudreaux boost, or you're an absolute dumpster fire mess. You should still be better than the Coyotes.
Sure, but I think fan apathy would have just been at such an all-time high if they had kept with Jim and Travis. If they had stuck around with them, and then it'd just be they should beat the Coyotes, but the people just be it'll be the one game where they'll absolutely kill us 4-1, and Louis Eriksson scores 2 goals, has an assist, something like that. It'll be something like that.
Well, yes, but again, it's one of those things where it's the Canucks, you got to hold yourself to the standards of being them.
Yeah.
But then there's the Toronto game of it all, where that is a game that I'm very curious to see where the Canucks are at right now, because Toronto is a team that is playing probably the best hockey it's played in their entire Matthews, Marner, Nylander era, right? They're playing their best hockey ever. at this point. Probably that actually might be true. Like that might be the best. This might be the best Leafs team ever, and they've been around for a long time, right? The way that they're playing, at least currently. And I look at that Toronto team, and I'm like, okay, if you can beat Toronto's coming in, let's look at the facts here. Toronto's coming in having won 2 in a row, one of which was a game where they completely cooked the Edmonton Oilers like nobody's business. Like again, and that's, the Oilers might be struggling now a little bit, but they still have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like that's
Doesn't
still
matter.
Impressive. Like that's
those
still
two players. You could have a pretty terrible roster around them, and those two will drag you at least to a playoff spot in some way.
Seriously. And
so
like if you
they'll figure it out.
If you can hold them to no points in a game, as a team that has, the Leafs are notoriously a team that's not necessarily great defensively. They've gotten much better, but they're still middle of the pack now versus where they used to be terrible. They're middle of the pack now. They're like, if you can hold those guys to 0 points, you're doing something very right. Yeah. And you're coming off of that game. You're coming off of a bit of a wonky one against the Blackhawks, but a game where that normally with the Leafs in particular, they might, after blowing the lead, they probably would have folded and just kind of drifted away.
They get the luckiest stanchion bounce I've seen in like 10 years.
It's a lucky bounce, but it's
so weird.
But those are the things that for the Leafs almost always end up in the other direction. It always ends up they're the ones getting hit with the weird stanchion goal in the last.
True, or like a goalie handles the puck and it goes 5-hole. Like I remember, like back in the early 2010s
game.
Not that game, but there's also a game I think against Carolina where I think it was Reimer Bernier is trying to stick the puck and it just literally goes straight through him, and that was I think a game-winning goal in the third period. So
he did that a couple times. Toronto. But like they're a team that's playing like they're up to the level they should be. Like it wasn't like this isn't like last year where the Leafs were clearly a team playing in a division that they should, in fact, be way better than everybody else 100% of the time. They're playing now you're in a case where you're playing every team in the league again. And they're still winning. They're still winning with regularity. And I believe they're tied for first in the NHL, I do believe, with Tampa.
So they're tied for the
first. They have more wins
in the division. They played one more game than Atlanta.
They played one more game.
Tampa.
Jeez.
Whoa, where did that come from?
No, God, that came out of nowhere.
I'm so sorry.
God, terrible. No one wants Atlanta back. Actually, that's not true. Some people do. I am of the mindset of please no. They got 2 tries. You don't get a third. You do not get a third. I'm sorry. Unless somebody relocates, you don't get a third. No. So that's it. Like, and they beat Carolina recently. The Canucks beat Carolina in a 2-1 game. But that Carolina team was coming off had played the night before. So it's a little bit of not an asterisk. The win still counts for 2 points, but it's still a case of like, oh, maybe I didn't get Carolina on their best night kind of thing, right? This is a game where you're going to get Toronto, who is already in Vancouver. They've been in Vancouver since yesterday. They were on the ice yesterday at UBC, I do believe.
They were at Doug Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah, because their game in Calgary got postponed. So they went right to Vancouver. They have been sitting there waiting for the Canucks. That is a healthy, I think mostly healthy anyway, like a rested team, at the very least a rested Toronto Maple Leafs team, second in the NHL, playing great, playing up to their potential. And so if you're Vancouver and you can go into that game and win, if you can go in and put on a performance worthy, like in a game where particularly you like put a stamp on it as you were the better team in this game and you played like it, that can in fact change a lot of the way people look at you. They are missing some people. Jeez,
no, this is what I was going to say. So there's 3 people that will be missing. Marner on IR, Tavares and Kerfoot in protocol as of today. And they're not playing tomorrow now. So the big one's Tavares. So it was funny. You were hyping them up, and I'm like, they're going to be missing some players tomorrow. I'm like, they're still playing good hockey without Mitch. So I feel I feel good for them in general. Like if I was a Leafs fan, I'm like, hey, you know what? They're tied for first in the division. They've played some of the best hockey they've had in this era. They're hoping to put like this, like nothing in the regular season really matters until it gets to the playoffs. Everyone knows that. They've been through so much first round misery. They're just like, regular season's meaningless. Like
For
Steve
Toronto,
Dangle Steve Dangle was joking. It's like, why do I do LFR? Like I'll do it for 82 games, but the only point is that they have to win a playoff round. So
they would play Florida. They at least they would play
if the
Florida
playoffs
in
started
first
today,
round right now. Yeah, if the playoffs started today, they'd play Florida, who's only 2 points behind them. And with a game in hand. So God, that division. Talk about the Atlantic Division. They're
look at the Red Wings. Technically they were not in a wild card spot because
no, they are in a wild card spot.
How many points do they have? They've got 80.
They've got 31.
31.
They've got 31 points.
Yeah, technically you're right. They're ahead of the Blue Jackets.
They're ahead of the Blue Jackets. Boston has 4 games in hand on them and only 1 point behind. So that's where the errors come in. That's kind of where
this is why that's why doing if the playoffs started today brackets
doesn't matter.
It doesn't work. God. It's so weird.
That would be so funny if they got it. Apparently Alex Nedeljkovic is just, well, not to no one's surprise.
I don't understand why Carolina traded him.
That's a great question.
That is one of the more confounding trades of that offseason. Like
I really heavily questioned that at the time, but considering that the Hurricanes are first in the Metro, I can't really ask them that question too hard because they're clearly not suffering because of it, right? It's clearly not hurting them.
It just seems like the asset management, like what did they get back? Like I feel they got like a second rounder. Maybe
they got very low. They got very little back.
I thought it was only a third rounder. It's essentially like they got an Eddie Lach type of deal, and I'm like, and now Nedeljkovic is like leagues above Eddie. At least
Eddie. Oh yeah, God, they talk about that again. Jim Benning, lots of mistakes in his tenure. His goaltending record, his track record of analyzing goaltenders was actually pretty good. When he traded Eddie Lach, that ended up being the correct call very quickly.
Yes, as much as he was a fan favorite.
As much as he was a fan favorite, I was one of those people that was always like, I like Eddie Lach. I think he's very personal. I think he's very fun. I would love to have him on this podcast someday.
Yes.
But I was never like sold on the idea of him being like the long-term number one. Like I was always like, I think he's kind of a good stopgap, but I would pick Ryan Miller over him right now more than anybody, especially with Miller's track record, which again ended up being the correct call. Yeah. I think, I spent all this time talking about how I think the Canucks really could get some momentum going if they beat the Leafs, but God, if you throw out now they're missing Tavares.
So
Marner,
Saturday night, it's going to be a must watch with those players out and the Canucks buzzing. 6 straight wins.
The Canucks are buzzing, and they are also not, they're missing players as well from COVID, but no one who's like, none of with all due respect to Tyler Mott and Juho Lammikko, and
watch you jinx this tomorrow though by saying
Juho Lammikko and Matt and God, who else is in there? Luke Shen and and who else am I missing? Oh, probably no one.
No. Well,
I felt really.
You feel so confident. You're just like, yeah, the Canucks have no one important in COVID, and then tomorrow morning,
now, knock on wood. Okay, as of this recording. They have no backbreakers out, thank God. But the Canucks have an opportunity to win here.
Yes,
like they have a real shot. They have the way they're playing. They have a real shot.
They have a real shot.
The big question being the defense, because in the game against the Sharks, there was again the Canucks were opportunistic and the forwards really did their job very, very well. Jason Dickinson, another guy you could really give out honorable mentions to on the Infinity Gauntlet for how well how he got the empty net goal. And I was like, God, he deserved that so much. Cause he got 3 breakaway opportunities. He had some prime scoring chances on Aiden Hill, just couldn't get the puck to go in. He was working for it. And then I think it was Pettersson that passed it off to him. I think Pettersson could have had the shot and he passed it to Dickinson anyway. On that, and I was like, that was the right thing. That was a good teammate move by Pettersson in that case, where I was like, yeah, pass it to Dickinson. He deserved it for the way he'd been playing. But the defense, considering that they had lost Brisebois, they called up Brisebois, and then for one game, and he immediately gets hurt in the second period,
Yeah.
does not return to the game. They're playing with 5 defensemen. Noah Juleson is getting clearly in over his head. Like
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately, he is not like he can do in a pinch, but like there were multiple plays that turned into like
there was
prime Shark scoring chances.
Well, there was a
like,
goal straight up where they just
goal.
walked past him, and not past him. I feel bad because it's a bouncing puck, but he's turned and then boom, the Sharks are past him and they sniped one past them. So
it was clearly a case of like, he's clearly not NHL material defensive wise yet. But they're gonna have to use him anyway because that's all they got. Madison Bowie's coming up, but I don't think but I think he's coming in to replace Brisebois. God, like it's a case of like the defense was not there. That's gonna be the big question because that defense, I look at the idea of like, oh God, Noah Juleson in a situation where he's in a 1-on-1 defensive situation against Austin Matthews, and I'm like,
he's gonna get absolutely.
I'm like, oh no, like I could just see like it's one of those like, check it out, Lee. So you can see the second where his
you can literally, it'll also be like. You can also just imagine that play because like if Matthews ever did that, it would just be like rewind every time you're on TSN Sportsnet. Got to see this.
Got it.
Walks in, boom.
I don't even
Leafs goal. Just
I wish we hadn't even brought it up now because I shouldn't have brought it up. That was a mistake because now
you're gonna manifest it. Unfortunately,
I've manifested it. I'm so sorry, Noah. I'm so sorry. But like overall, if the defense if they can hold their own even a little bit, I think Thatcher Demko is playing at the level that he's been playing of lately. And I wrote about it in the article I did for Canucks Army this week, where I was like, God, he's clearly the cornerstone piece of the franchise. Jim Rutherford knows it. I know it. You know it. He's a future Vezina winner. No, I did mention the idea of, hey, he might win the Hart Trophy if things get nuts. If they
shut that down. I mean, I don't think it would happen.
Not going. If they make if the Canucks make the damn playoffs, considering where they were at before this, 100% Thatcher Demko's winning the Hart Trophy. Like that's not even a debate. Like, come on.
I don't
like
think
if they don't make it, no, he's not going to win. But like, come on, the way he's playing, how could he not win? How could he? It'll end up being
well. Okay, not saying he wouldn't deserve it. All I'm saying is that the NHL has a bunch of tricks and BS to play around with. They'd be like, oh, it's Austin Matthews, or it would be Kucherov. No, it wouldn't be him because he's injured. But like, all I'll say is that I really doubt they would be like, yes, it's Thatcher. It's a feel-good story. Like, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying I would not be surprised if they just be like, no, it's this. And we're all like,
I think people find it very hard to ignore the goalie angle, like from MVP voting, like when a good case comes up. Because right now he's a great case. Like, come on, like if we're going based, like I really wish you know what I wish? I wish the NHL, like the way that the NHL voted on awards, like it was like a bi-monthly thing. Like it was like a monthly thing where you put in your one ballot in October, you put in a ballot in November, you put a ballot in December kind of thing, where it's like a case of like it's accumulative, because otherwise like there are cases where it's like guys get left out even though they had a great run just because their team wasn't like necessarily like wowing people in the later stages of the year, because it's always the recency bias kind of thing. Like Connor McDavid's obviously always going to be a Hart candidate and everything, regardless of where the Oilers sit, because of course he should be.
Might be Ovechkin.
Ovechkin also in there.
That's because he's leading in like points right now at 36.
That's the thing though, right? Like knowing NHL awards voters, if let's say the top 3 candidates are McDavid, Ovechkin, Demko, if those are your 3, they're all going to be like, oh, there's this guy on here that's normally not here. Let's vote for him instead, because that's usually what they do.
Really?
Like they're they notoriously have like, there have been multiple cases where they easily could have given Connor McDavid like the Hart Trophy before. And
I see.
Just because they were like,
that's because they were like,
well, there's this other guy. Like, it's like,
I don't think it's about just the other guy. It's just that McDavid wins easily every year just because he's the best player in the world. So they're just like, we don't want the repetitiveness of being like, and this year's Hart Trophy winner is
Exactly.
Connor
And
McDavid. He's won it like 7 years in a row or whatever.
Hasn't he won it 2 in a row now? So they're due to give it to a Thatcher Demko now. Come on.
I mean, I hope. I would hope to be proven wrong. I think that would be amazing if he did.
I think he'd well, I think he could win. I think regardless of where the Canucks end up, I think he'll have a shot at the Vezina. Vezina for sure. I think my hot take from last year was that the COVID outbreak on the Canucks halted what would have been a Vezina finalist, a Vezina finalist year for Demko. I think he would have finished in the top 3 had they kept going. I think the outbreak, not only obviously did he get sick, obviously, and that affected it. I think just the month-long layoff completely like took out his momentum as well too. So he came out a little bit rusty out of the gates when they came back as well. I think he would have finished top 3 in voting for sure had he kept playing. This year, I think it's another case where if the Canucks can keep winning games, I think it's going to be you'd have to work to ignore him for the Vezina because it's Jack Campbell. That's another thing. Jack Campbell's been very good for the Leafs. He is having a great year. People are still like a little bit like, oh, it's a flash in the pan for Jack Campbell. I don't think it's that. He played a full season. It wasn't a full season last year, but like he played the entire last season as a starting goaltender and played this well the whole time then too. Like I can't look at him as like, oh, it's just a fluke kind of thing when it's clearly like been sustained over a season and a bit here. He could fall off the cliff this season. But I don't see that happening. I think he's gonna. I think his numbers are gonna regress a little bit. Like I think he's playing it like it's like a ridiculous clip where it's like I think he's like at a 940 something or something just stupid ridiculous. Where it's like no goaltender can hold that up unless they're Dominic Hasek over. He's at a 937. Yeah, that's a little bit hard to maintain over a full 82. That'll definitely drop a little bit, but. God, those are 2 goaltenders right now, both American, by the way. God, if you're Team Canada, I'm worried. We'll talk about that in a bit, I'm sure. The Olympics and everything. If NHLers do end up going, God, you're not gonna like facing Thatcher Demko or Jack Campbell.
Well, I think I'll just say this now. I don't think they're going.
Yeah, I don't think they're going either. It's a case of. It's so clearly not a good choice to make anymore. It was one thing when it was before when we were talking about, the NHL not wanting them to go just because they didn't want to affect their business and that sort of thing. And they didn't want to and the whole idea that oh, this doesn't grow the game for us. It's like, yes, it does. Be quiet. Yeah. Send the best damn players to play in China. Cause that's good for China to see NHL talent, right?
Yeah.
That's great. That would be silly of them not to send them. But now with the whole pandemic part thrown in where it's like, if you get sick, if you contract COVID in Beijing, you might get stuck there for 5 weeks with no pay. It's maybe not, maybe no more. Maybe this is dead now.
Nope. Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. Drancer had a great suggestion of send them to just do an impromptu World Cup right after the All-Star game, which honestly would be a good decision. Would honestly be a good call. It would be too hard to pull off with this little amount of time, with this little notice, because the All-Star break and the Olympic break are mushed together in February.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like you have to think about all the logistics of, we'd have to insta-rush a bunch of jerseys in. We'd have to sell a bunch of ads. We'd have to find a place that doesn't have concerts and venues.
We'd have to find staff and coaches available.
See, you know what? That part's the easy part. I think you could easily assemble the teams themselves. I think that's the part that would be relatively easy to get done. It's the extracurriculars of finding an actual rink that is available for 2 weeks in North America during that time. It's finding practice rinks. It's finding time for flying. I don't know if it'd be that buy
impossible.
Tickets.
Well,
it I remember when impossible.
I remember when there was neutral. I remember when there were neutral site discussions for the bubble, and people were bringing up North Dakota and stuff like that. I feel like you could find a pretty decent university venue with at least 10,000 seats. There's there's that one university place. I don't know if it's equipped for hockey, but maybe it's Kentucky University.
Yeah.
It's like they have like a 17 or 16,000 seat arena only for like university events.
Yeah.
And like you could easily put like a major league team in there.
Really, I think the hardest part is that because for anyone who doesn't know like how the stuff like the World Cup works and everything, those events are still like, even if it's an NHL run event, like the 2016 World Cup of Hockey was still a double IHF like sanctioned event. So like it's still like it counts on like the official like International Ice Hockey Federation like statistics and like records and everything. I have a hard time believing that after all the hassle of getting this set up for NHL players to go, that if the league turned around and went, hey, not only are we not going to send our players, we're also going to run a competing tournament directly against the Olympics at the same time, that the IHF would be like on board with that. And it would be one of those things where it's like, I don't know exactly what the red tape is on that, but there's probably like the amount of approvals, especially for like cases where it's like you have to try, like in Russia's case, for example, right? Russia's teams often are not made up entirely of NHLers. They often include some KHL guys.
Yeah.
And how are you going to get those guys sanctioned to play? Like those guys might get like reprimanded for jumping to play in the World Cup of Hockey instead of playing for the Russian national team. So it's like at the Olympics. So it's like the amount of red tape to go through. It's possible, but would be insanely difficult and like 11th hour to pull off. I wouldn't be down for it though.
Yeah.
Like I'd be told, I love the World Cup. I thought it was great when it happened. I thought it was, if it wasn't for a pandemic and it wasn't for the NHL, like getting in their own way, a lot of the times I want them to do that every 4 years. Yeah. We got way off topic here, didn't we? Yeah, the Canucks can beat Toronto. I think they've got a good shot here. And you know, in terms of like the Canucks off the ice, like things are still moving in that sort of things as well, like moving pretty quickly in terms of like decisions being made and people being hired and stuff.
Yeah.
Derek Clancy was hired as assistant GM. He had been working under Jim Rutherford with the Penguins for a long time. In fact, had been there since the Ray Shero days. He had been the Penguins director of pro scouting from 2018 to 2019, during which they won 2 Stanley Cups. And he was also the Penguins director of player personnel from 2019 until 2021, same time frame that Jim Rutherford left the organization, and then went on to be a pro scout with the Flames before being hired here as the assistant GM. Looks like a good track record for him. I don't know enough about him. He's one of those guys that like straight up just I don't know a whole lot about him. But like just based on the track record, to like specifically, I look at the director of pro scouting, which is something the Canucks have really struggled with in the time frame that Jim Benning was here. Like they really struggled with pro scouting. If you can bring in a guy who clearly did a very good job in terms of that, or at least running that department during years where they won 2 Stanley Cups, like that's not nothing. That's a record of success that's hard to replicate. And if he's going to come in and be able to provide that expertise on a level that can make the Canucks better, in particularly when it comes to their defense, because like the Penguins are a similar team in the sense of like how they kind of always had the forward groups more or less figured out. It was a matter of kind of finding the defense to play around them in a lot of cases. And like you right down to the whole, like it was basically Chris Letang and then 5 guys for a long time. And then here it's Quinn Hughes with 5 guys, right? Like it's a case of finding what's the phrase? The replaceable bums thing, where it's like the guys who can come in, do a good job for a couple years, be a great piece, and then you let them go when the money when it gets to a little bit too high. And that's kind of what the Canucks need now more than ever, is guys who can come in, provide a sustainable NHL defensive job and, you know, depth role job for a couple years or two. Not be a huge drain on the wallet, on like the cap, on the cap floor, on the cap. You use
those ELCs. Like teams have been using this strategy for years. You have not to say that they're not good players, but you're able to look into your prospect pool and say, hey, these guys can get looks in the NHL and sit into our lineup. You have teams like Tampa that have been doing this for a long time. They'll find pieces from a 5th or 6th round and they become a solid piece for a championship team. And if you're able to keep them, great. And if not, they move on, get their big payday, but you look in the prospect pool, hey, there's another one of them.
And even some of their slip through from time to time, like Carter Verhaeghe. Just because they had so much to go around, Carter Verhaeghe goes over to Florida and becomes
so many leftovers that
contributor.
ends up being like top line players for the teams.
What's funny is the Canucks should have known. He scored a hat trick against them, and they didn't. And they had a chance to sign him and didn't.
I really was wishing they signed him. Yeah.
Yeah, Carter Verhaeghe. Carter Verhaeghe could have been yours.
Nope.
That's something that I would love to see the Canucks put more time and effort into. So if Derek Clancy is a part of that and was a part of that in Pittsburgh, there's a good chance he can help provide that in Vancouver as well. The other big one, Stan Smyl named Vice President of Hockey Ops. This is, I don't know if this is necessarily like, so here's the thing, right? Like with Stan Smyl in particular, it does seem like he's going to get a bigger say, in terms of like Jim Rutherford has mentioned him numerous times, as well as the Sedins, as well as like people he's going to be listening to quite a bit, which is good because they provide they know the market very differently and they know it much definitely
more in depth.
Call a spade a spade. Yeah. They know it way better than Jim Rutherford does because Jim Rutherford Jim Rutherford's never been a Canuck, never played for the Canucks. He's never been on a management team for the Canucks before. This is his first time here. He doesn't know the market super well. He's and Stan Smyl and the Sedins know it like the back of their hand. They've literally lived their entire lives in the Vancouver market, essentially. Yeah. And they're going to be able to provide good expertise there. For Stan Smyl, like part of me wonders, like, oh, is this just kind of like just a role for the thanks for being here. Here's some money. You still don't have to do much kind of thing.
Like to just keep them complacent.
It's title. It's like, no, more like just like, well, okay. As I said, like on when Jim Benning got fired, that Stan Smyl is basically the one player that they could never fire. Like the one person that they could never fire, even if they wanted to, right?
He's a lifelong Canuck.
He's a lifelong Canuck. He has outlived ownership group. Like he has outlasted, I should say, ownership groups, coaches, GMs, far more
other
I think it's
players in
management. Clear. Looking based on what happened and how he's talked about it, like how Smyl's talked about his time in the organization under the Benning era, I think it's pretty clear to me anyway that if Jim Benning could, he would have fired Stan Smyl like a long time ago. Probably, but since he couldn't, knowing that he's the one untouchable in the building, that the Francesco Aquilini would be like, "Are you nuts? No, get out of my office." If he tried to fire, they did the other thing, which is just essentially freeze him out of the inner circle, essentially. And we're like, okay, you're still going to collect a paycheck. You'll still have an office here, but we're not going to listen to you on anything. Like we're going to ignore any of your suggestions. Yeah. And that's kind of what they did. That's what Benning did. So I don't think this is going to be a case like that per se, where it's just it's title only. It's title and a raise only.
No,
kind of
and
I do think this is an active role. I think this will be an active role.
Smyl, at that first press conference, he presented himself like he is more involved and he is going to clash. Not clash in a negative, but the idea is that there's going to be differing objectives and perspectives on how to actually go forward with the vision of a team. They'll have a unified vision, but as to how to get there, that's where things will differ. And I'm glad that at least he has that role now. There was a little unclarity when they fired Jonathan Wall and Chris Gear. Smyl was the one person that was quoted. And I feel like that's just, again, like the Aquilinis, not to say they threw him to the wolves, but at the same time, like they're like, yeah, Smyl, you get to do the goodbye quote. Thank you for your service, Chris and Jonathan. Yeah. So I'm glad they finally clarified that. Like they didn't even give him a role. Like in that press release, Smyl was just released as Stan Smyl said Stan Smyl. Everyone's like, isn't he still the interim GM? Because Rutherford hadn't been, Rutherford had been named interim GM, but Smyl's position hadn't been clarified. He's still an advisor, but now he is the VP of Hockey Ops.
Yeah, now he has a straight up full title with the team, which honestly, a long time coming.
It was well deserved, and I'm glad he's sticking around.
Yeah, one of the other things that Rutherford has talked about recently that I've loved to hear again after 8 years of just some of the worst some of the worst management I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Is like, no, straight up the worst management like the Canucks have had.
Mhm.
Like it's incredible hearing Jim Rutherford say things like, yeah, we want different opinions and people with different backgrounds and voices in our management team. It's like, good Lord, like,
Yeah.
where has this been? Where has this been for so long? You can have dissenting opinions in your front office. Why? I never like.
No way.
Good.
It has to be an insular circle where everything becomes an echo chamber.
Where
That's how you win cups.
Where you only hire yes men who agree with everything you do and
you
never
hire
question you.
And you hire assistant general managers who are there entitled, but we actually have no idea what they do.
Yeah, John Weiss.
Let's just hope, because I mean, he was also with the Flames. As an AGM as well, but like he was very high up on like players like Mark Janikowski. I guess he loves scouting. I assume that the Derek Clancy, who is a pro scout, an actual pro scout, has a better insight into actually how to scout good players.
Yeah, we shall see. Like, again, the record in Pittsburgh definitely speaks for itself, but Vancouver might be a different story. We shall see how it goes from there.
Yeah.
All right. Last bit of news to get to, I think, for today. This one kind of came out of nowhere. Well, yeah, 100% came out of nowhere.
For
Paul
sure.
Maurice resigned as head coach of the Winnipeg Jets today. This is a quote directly from the Jets PR account. Quote, the Winnipeg Jets announced today that head coach Paul Maurice has decided to resign from his position of head coach of the hockey club effective immediately. His resignation has been accepted by the team. Dave Lowry has agreed to assume the head coaching duties on an interim basis, and then it just continues with media stuff. Paul Maurice did talk today about how it was like he spoke to the media today because again, it wasn't a contentious thing. It wasn't a firing. It was very much it seems very much like a case like he just he felt his time was done. And this is an article. This is a quote from Sportsnet's article. This is a quote directly from his press conference here. This is a good team. I'm a good coach, but sometimes when you take over a team, it's like you're starting at the bottom of the mountain and you're pushing a rock back up to the top, and you're only able to get it to a certain place. And that's where I feel I'm at. And if you allow me some arrogance, I would say that I'm better positioned than anyone to know that they need a new voice. They haven't quit on me. They're a good bunch of men. My relationship is strong with all of them, and I'm cheering for them. But when you have a 26-year professional hockey coaching career, they need a new voice. They need somebody to help them get to that next place. It doesn't need to be a necessarily more experienced, more talented guy. It just needs to be a different voice. It's the right time for it, and I know that. Yeah, so he just knew it was his time to go, and that's honestly like that's a rare quality in any head coach, in any GM, in any person of power. Sometimes it's very hard to accept when for you to be the one that says, I don't think I'm the right fit here anymore. Like I'm getting in the way. For what it's worth, I don't know if that's necessarily true because I don't watch the Jets on a regular basis, but if he feels like it is, and he's the guy in charge of making those decisions, then yeah, power to him to make that call. Right. But I guess for Winnipeg, because looking at where the Jets are at right now, the Jets are a team that I honestly had no clue where they were at. Like they're one of those teams that for lately, because I just haven't been keeping tabs on them. They're fifth in the division. They're definitely a ways back from the leaders right now. Like they're 5 points back of Colorado, who's in fourth right now. It's clearly a top heavy division there. It's a case of like, if he feels that it's time for him to move on, again, power to him to make that call and to make that decision now, and rather than be like, well, I'll wait until the end of the season and see how it goes. Like, good for him. For Winnipeg, I don't know about you. Where do you think they end up? Do you think they end up getting better with Dave Lowry and potentially a new coach, or do you think this is
I don't know if they'll get a Boudreaux bounce out of it. I think there is an aspect of like a new coach coming in. You never know.
The Lowry lift.
The only way to find out is actually to see them play. I think that going forward that they do have some very talented players. Dubois, I think, he's the face essentially. And I feel bad. Wheeler, I think, is he out long-term still from that injury against Vancouver? I thought was it against Vancouver?
He's at least out right now. He's at least out for right now for sure.
Honestly, yeah. I don't know what to make of. I don't know what to make of them in terms of where if they'll make the playoffs or not. I feel like they're in that mindset where they want to be competitive. They were in the conference final not that many years ago. They've got players, they got, Dubois and so forth, and Hellebuck. Like, that's a franchise goalie right there. You don't want to waste his years. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting though, because if there is that Lowry lift, I feel like there'll be a lot of fans that will kind of embrace that, like they have with Boudreau, and also like with Maurice. He had been there for like 7+ years. He's been there like the head coach, one of the longer head coaches in NHL in terms of like current NHL head coaches in their tenures. Yeah, Cooper still is the longest now. Yeah. And number 2 is now taken up, as I was telling Lachlan before we recorded, Jeff Blashill of the Detroit Red Wings.
God, that is, and they're a team that is apparently just currently in a playoff spot.
It's weird.
Somehow.
2021, 2022 is weird.
Now,
weird
the
year.
asterisk being that the Bruins are 1 point behind them and have 4 games in hand.
Yeah.
So that's going to probably shift. But for now, the Red Wings are the last wildcard team, which is bonkers to say the least. The Islanders are in the bottom.
Though, just a heads up on Maurice though. Apparently, so people were joking about this on Reddit. So they lost to the Sabres. The Jets lost to the Sabres a few days ago. He bag skated them, and then today he resigns. I don't know if there's a better way to go out as a coach. If you maybe like, not saying he lost faith in them, because he says he has a good relationship with all the players, but like, you lose to the Sabres of all teams. And then you're like, all right, boys, like, we're going bag skate practice. And then they have the off day. And then he's like, I think my time is done. That's what a way to go out.
Do you think he was just watching the bag skate being like, what am I doing here? Like, maybe he's just like kind of like sitting there being a
realization. Like, maybe he felt bad, like, because you're like, as a head coach, if you get embarrassed at like by a team that's not very good or supposed to not be very good, got to get to practice, put in the effort. But maybe at the bag skate, he's just like, am I really doing this right now? Is it my fault? Am I holding the team back? I mean, yeah. That's actually not that like, makes a little bit of sense, I guess.
It's one of those where it's like, it's one of those, just like that idea. He's just having an existential crisis while Mark Scheifele is just like, hustling through the blue, like is just hustling blue line to blue line.
No,
like,
yeah, he's just like, staring ahead.
And they're like,
Paul's just thinking, he's just like, why am I
here? I could have been an astronaut.
I was the coach of the Leafs. I was the coach of the Leafs for 2 seasons, and I almost made the playoffs. I left out by 1 point in 06-07.
Yeah.
And then Mark Scheifele's like, yo, coach, you all right?
Yeah. He's just, again, just like, having a full like existential crisis. He's bought like you see him like driving out of the rink in like a brand new Camaro or something that he bought the
new
day
lease
before.
On life. He's just like, a new perspective.
It's
brand
like
new
this
life here.
Somebody's like got a photo of him like driving. It's like he's driving top down. He's driving with his new Camaro with the top down in the middle of a Winnipeg hailstorm. That seems like a bad call. Like, he's just like driving out. Like, okay, bye.
Honestly, okay. Speaking to that, LeBron put out a tweet earlier today. Paul Maurice says he sent a text message to his pal Pete DeBoer this morning, and it read, "I win." So maybe he is in that type of like phase where he's like, I'm out as coach. I have a new lease about whatever I want to do. Maybe he's just like, I win. I'm out. I don't have to deal with the pressure. Maybe because, coaching a team for 7+ years, especially one that was longing for success as Winnipeg was. Yeah, that probably, puts a nail in you in terms of like just the pressure and just, the day-to-day type of stuff.
See what I'm wondering about that text, the I win text.
So it's not a Charlie Sheen type of thing, though.
Well, more about does he know something about Pete DeBoer that we don't? Like, in terms of like, is Pete DeBoer's job on ice himself? Is that the thing? Like by him quitting instead of being fired or something, is he like, haha, I win, you're gonna get fired, and I'm not.
Okay, I'm looking in the Reddit thread, and people are like, is he going to Detroit if Blashill gets fired? because
why would Blashill get fired?
Well, longest term, like if the team gets competitive, competitive to a point, and if they don't perform, it's the Travis Green type of thing. If they underperform and they're not like playing well under him because they've got players. What's the guy, American guy I'm thinking of? I just lost his name all of a sudden.
Tyler Bertuzzi?
No, different guy. It was a Larkin, captain. But if they underperform one year and they're like decide, okay, we're done, and then they bring in someone like as tenured as Maurice, and that's kind of the Boudreau equivalent in a way, in some ways.
In
a
some
lot
ways,
of experience.
I think with Maurice in particular, like knowing the Red Wings and knowing Steve Yzerman, I don't think he'd be like a prime candidate to replace them. I think they'd want somebody a little bit on the younger side. Like I think they'd go for somebody who's a little bit like fresher faced, like especially like considering like the last big hire Steve Yzerman made as a coach was John Cooper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a guy who came out of like nowhere in theory, in reality, to become the head coach of the Lightning, right?
I think it was. I think I know what the text was about. It seems like maybe it was a joke between them where it's like who got fired first, or like
there you go.
So if if he quits, he wins. So
yeah, he won, which means I might be correct here, and they might be firing. The Knights might be en route to firing Pete DeBoer. Which honestly, I'm going to be honest here, like that's probably a decision they should have made a while ago. I never understood that hiring from their. I think
maybe it was because he was on. Maybe he was because on the other side of the Sharks' victory, they're like, we need.
That's exactly why they did. Oh, that's exactly
ownership and McCrimmon looked at that and they're like, I want him on my team because he beat us.
Yeah, that was the worst decision they could have made, was hiring Pete DeBoer. I think that set them back a while because he's not a good coach. He's not a good coach. Neither another coach who still has a job right now, I think that shouldn't necessarily, is Dominic Ducharme. I don't know why he's. I think that's not gonna last long, but because considering
Alex Burrows for head coach.
Alex Burrows for head coach. Hell yeah, let's get Actually, you know what? Bring Alex Burrows to Vancouver as assistant. Let's bring him back to Vancouver.
I'd love that.
To work under Bruce Boudreau. Oh, that'd be a good. Talk about a positive locker room. Talk about setting a good positive reinforcement locker room when you have Boudreau with his assistant Alex Burrows. Like, your team would be having the best time of their lives at all points. And with that, I think this has been the CreaseCast for your Friday. It's going to be a big game against the Leafs tomorrow on Saturday. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back on Monday with a show after they've played 2 games. They played the Coyotes and they've played the Leafs. I am Lachlan Irvin. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. And you can follow our podcast account on Twitter at the CreaseCast. You can follow us on. You make sure to subscribe on your local podcast platforms. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications whenever a new episode drops in video form. We also have video episodes on Spotify now, so you can go check those out there too. Jacob, where can the fine folks find you?
They can find me on Twitter at JKMNEW and also on Instagram. Full name though, jacob.km.new.
Awesome. And Cody's not here today, but you can go check out Cody's work at ahlnuxharvest.com. And you can follow him on Twitter at Cody Sievertson. And I also forgot to mention, you can follow me. You can find my writing work at canucksarmy.com. I write there pretty frequently, so go check that out there. Also, if you enjoy the show, be sure to check out our Patreon for $5 a month to get bonus episodes and other bonus content. I'm actually going to be recording something today for the Patreon people that might be coming out sooner rather than that should be coming out this weekend. So be on the lookout for that. And am I missing anything? I might be.
I'm trying to think because I'm technically the producer here. I should be.
No, I am not missing anything. All right. Go enjoy your weekend. Please stay safe. Please wear a mask. Please keep social distance. And go do what Jacob's doing and see Spider-Man.
Yes, and also because I won't be on the next one. It's a Monday show. This is the last episode before holiday break. Everyone have a happy holidays from me.
Oh yeah. Happy holidays. Enjoy. Bye guys. See you on Monday.
See ya.